Hey guys, Mixed Media Girl here. So I know when you're just starting out with acrylic pouring or fluid art, you'll have a lot of questions, and sometimes they can be hard to find straight answers, and sometimes you'll find 10 different answers. So I put up a post in my Facebook group, which is Acrylic Pouring and Fluid Art. There's a link down in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on Facebook, you're probably already in the group, but if not, go ahead and join it. But I put up a post asking what are some basic questions you guys have that you don't feel like you've gotten an answer to or you need some more clarification on. And in this video, I'm going to answer as many as humanly possible. I do want to say I have a playlist called Getting Started with Acrylic Pouring on my YouTube channel. And on that playlist, it answers a lot of the basic questions. I also wrote an entire book called The Paint Pouring Workshop, which is available on Amazon and in Barnes & Noble. All this I'll link down in the description. Let's get started. All right, so Cockrell Amanda asked, how much glue medium should you use to mix your paint? That's a very good question. With glue, I use less than I would with another pouring medium generally because it is thicker and it also can change the color of your paint. So I will usually do a 50-50 ratio, glue and paint, and then add water to consistency depending on what kind of paint you're using. Glue is pretty thick, so you often do need to use water. All right, next I have, regarding your mixed resin and paint pour, do you mix the paint pouring medium and resin all together? The answer is no. Resin and acrylic pouring are completely separate subjects. They don't mix. So you can do an acrylic pour and then you could seal it with resin, but you're not going to mix the two techniques. They're very different techniques. Resin is basically like a plastic in liquid form, and you can paint with it, and you can also seal things with it. You can also mold things with it. And then you have acrylic pouring, which is just taking acrylic paint and making it fluid and painting with that. So two totally different topics. They don't mix. All right, next is types of base paint thicknesses for different pouring mediums. This is from Pamela Haley. Here's my thought on this. I keep things as simple as humanly possible. I use one paint consistency for everything. I do not change it based off of the technique I'm doing. So that's my answer. You will definitely find different answers on YouTube like, oh, it's a little bit thinner for this. It's a little bit thicker for this. I keep it the same for everything. And that consistency is, there's many different descriptions, but I think it's more like a maple syrup, you know, or melted ice cream. I liked that one. They're all food related. But basically it's going to be thicker than water, but it should be, it should run off your stick very easily. It should pour and move around very easily, but it has to be thicker than water. If it's too watery, no go. Okay, so that's my answer. Then we have Lindsay Pettigrew, who said, I live in Scotland and started pouring last week. Haven't been able to find Floetrol. Can I use PVA glue? And also, I can't seem to get cells. Do I have to use silicone oil to get cells? This is an excellent question. So first of all, yes, you can use glue instead of Floetrol. You can also use just water. And then there are other pouring mediums that are absolutely available in your country. I think Liquitex pouring medium, and then I'm sure there's some other ones that are available there. So you can try a different one. In terms of cells, you do not, I repeat, do not have to have silicone or any kind of oil to create cells. This is one of my favorite misconceptions that people have, that you have to have an oil or silicone or anything to create cells. I have found that the best way to create cells is to have the right consistency of paint. If you are not getting cells, 100% guaranteed your paint is the wrong consistency. So work on that. Once I perfected my paint consistency, I couldn't not get cells. Now there are certain paints that will give you more cells than others. Metallic paints I found do often better for cells, and then some certain brands of paints as well. And some paints are better for not cells, but usually the pre-mixed versions, not the ones you're going to mix yourself. Usually the pre-mixed versions, like with the Artist Loft Ready Mix pouring paint, you're not going to really get cells unless you add oils. So there's my answer to that. Okay, next question is from Ellen Schmidt. Is this an expensive undertaking? That's an interesting question with zero answer possible. However, I will say this. First of all, whether something is expensive or not is a personal opinion. It's not a fact. Because if someone makes $100 million a year, you know, spending thousands of dollars a month is not expensive. If someone makes $1,000 a month, then spending $100 is expensive. So expensive is all relative. Also, there is such a wide variety of materials you can use. You can use paints that cost 50 cents a bottle. You can use paints that cost $10 a bottle. So it just depends on what you're using. I have done several videos, which is acrylic pouring on a budget. I'll include one of those down in the description. I think it's in my Getting Started with Acrylic Pour playlist on YouTube. But you can go to the dollar store and spend 10 bucks and get enough supplies to make multiple acrylic pours. So when you're first starting out, I definitely 100% recommend starting out with cheap materials. I, like probably a lot of other people, especially if you're already an artist, went all out and got the most expensive materials, and then my first, 20 paintings were horrible and I wasted a bunch of money. So start out cheap. All right, next. Let's see. From Nina Tatum, when you coat a canvas with a base coat, is it mixed with a pouring medium too, or just acrylic? Yes, my base is the same. All my paints are mixed the same. I don't use anything else. All right, next is how much paint, this is from Cindy. How much paint should you use for an 8x10 or a 10x10 so you have enough to cover the sides and not tilt too much off? My recipe, my ratio is 1 ounce of mixed paint for every 16 square inches of canvas. I use more paint than a lot of people, and I find that a lot of people don't use enough paint. So also, if you're in the Facebook group, there's a files section. I actually made a chart which has my recommendations for how much paint to use. So check that out. But that means for an 8x10 canvas, so you multiply 8x10 divided by 16, use a calculator, but that's 5 ounces. So you're gonna need 5 ounces. For a 16x20 canvas, you're gonna use about 20 ounces. And that will work for even, if you're using a canvas that's 2 inches deep, okay, you might wanna add a little bit more, but for even the 1 inch thick canvases, that ratio works totally fine. Okay, good. From Colleen, when you add silicone, I'm hearing you need to clean the oil off before you seal. How do you do that? Also, what is a shiny spray sealer / gloss? Okay, so on that, you want to first let your paint fully cure, which can take 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the temperature and humidity where you live. If you're in Las Vegas, it's very hot, very dry. Your painting's going to cure much faster than if you're, say, in Canada and it's raining and snowing the whole time in the middle of winter. You know what I mean? So that's going to play a factor. Make sure it's fully cured, and then you can clean it off with alcohol, and then you can just spray varnish it at that point. There's not too much you need to do. If you wanted to seal your painting with resin, that's a whole different subject. First of all, I wouldn't recommend using silicone or any oils at all, but if you did, it needs to be thoroughly cleaned. So there are a few different methods. You can use the alcohol to wipe it off. You can clean it with cornstarch. To do that, people put the cornstarch on it, let it sit, and let it soak up the silicone, and you repeat that time after time. Other people wash it with Dawn dish soap and water. It's very durable. After it's fully cured, acrylic paint is basically a plastic. So A, you don't have to seal it. You do not have to. It's just a preference. And B, it's pretty durable after it's fully cured. Don't try this 2 days after your painting is dry. It won't work. And then in terms of a spray sealer, I like to use Rust-Oleum Crystal Clear Enamel Spray because it's inexpensive and it gives me a nice, really glossy shine, brings the colors back up. It also comes in a matte and a satin. So if you wanted to just use a matte version, you can do that. That's what I recommend, but there's a million other great varnishes. There's Winsor Newton is another one that I use, but just price-wise, the Rust-Oleum is about $4 a can versus the Winsor Newton is about, I say $11 or $12 a can. So it's, the Winsor Newton is absolutely better if you're going for more high-end and selling your pieces for, you know, really decent prices. Then you might want to go with that. It has UV protection and other properties that the Rust-Oleum doesn't necessarily have, but the Rust-Oleum will work great. Okay, I'm going to answer one more question, and then what we're going to do is if I missed your question or if you have another question, put it down in the comments. I'm going to post this video on both Facebook and YouTube. So for the next video, I'll take comments from both. Try to not ask repetitive questions, of course. But let's see. So from Tammy Johnson, she says, I cannot figure out why my paints always mix together. They never seem to pour out like yours. Can you give me in ounces the mixture for Floetrol and paint? So first of all, definitely check out the Getting Started with Acrylic Pouring playlist. It has exactly how I mix my paints. But if your paints are mixing together and getting muddy, it's because they're too thin. You've added too much water or they're just too thin. It can also happen that your paints are really low quality and they're too thin. Like if you're using craft paint, it's very low pigment and the colors aren't going to stay as bright. They're going to mix together a bit more. So I recommend making your paint a little bit thicker. And if that still isn't giving you quite the bright colors that you want, try better paint. Try even the Liquitex Basics paint is inexpensive and it's really good quality, especially if you're just starting out. All right, guys, I hope that helps you. Once again, let me know your questions down in the comments. Please check out the Getting Started with Acrylic Pouring playlist that has answers to almost everything. So check that out before asking your next question. Also, please pick up a copy of the paint pouring workshop if you haven't already. I did a lot of research and went really into depth. It's got materials, paint recipes, techniques, troubleshooting, a glossary, all kinds of things. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.